Elijah Thorne drove, the hum of his luxury electric sedan a low murmur against the late afternoon quiet of the city. Sunlight, fractured by the skyscraper canyons, glinted off the polished chrome of his vehicle, reflecting the pristine, almost clinical order of his world. He was en route to another charity gala, another evening of forced smiles and strategic handshakes, a routine he'd perfected over decades as CEO of Thorne Innovations. His bespoke suit felt like a second skin, tailored to perfection, yet inside, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his right hand, a ghost from a past he rarely acknowledged. He navigated a turn, and the urban landscape shifted, the gleaming towers giving way to the grittier, lived-in alleys of the downtown core, a shortcut his GPS surprisingly suggested. And there, against a graffiti-splashed brick wall, sat a young boy, no older than 8, hunched over a piece of cardboard, oblivious to the world rushing past. Elijah's foot hesitated on the accelerator. It was a fleeting image, yet something about the boy's solitary focus, framed by the harsh reality of his surroundings, snagged at a forgotten corner of Elijah's meticulously compartmentalized heart. The gala was a blur of champagne flutes and hollow laughter. Elijah, a master of polite detachment, moved through the room, his expensive watch catching the ballroom's chandelier light. His assistant, a perpetually flustered woman named Miss Albright, handed him a stack of last-minute donations to approve. Among them, tucked oddly between a check for 100,000 and an anonymous jewel, was a crudely drawn picture. It was a stick-figure family, vibrant with crayon colors, standing under a lopsided sun. Next to them, a dog clearly adored, with ears that defied gravity. A small, almost imperceptible laugh escaped Elijah. It was childish, naive, a stark contrast to the sophisticated art adorning the gala walls. He almost tossed it aside, but something in the sheer earnestness of the lines made him pause. His polished boots, usually striding confidently, seemed to anchor him to the marble floor. He flipped it over, a flicker of irritation at the misplaced item. What was written on the back, scrawled in an unsteady hand, was just 3 words: "For my mama, alive." The laughter died in his throat. The tremor in his hand intensified, becoming a violent shake that rattled the paper. The elegant chatter of the room, once a distant hum, suddenly fell silent in his ears, replaced by a roaring emptiness. "Mama," the word echoed, not from the paper, but from a buried chamber of his own memory. He saw, not the child, but himself, younger, holding a similar drawing, a similar hope. The room, filled with the city's elite, seemed to fade, replaced by a crowded diner, the smell of grease and coffee, and the quiet strength of his own mother, working 2 jobs, her hands calloused, but her eyes full of an unwavering light. He remembered the warm sneakers she bought him, the luxury speeches he now gave a million miles from the shy eye contact he made as a boy. The contrast was a physical blow. Miss Albright, noticing his sudden pallor, approached cautiously. "Mr. Thorne, are you all right?" Her voice was a distant whisper. Elijah didn't hear her. He was no longer at the gala. He was back on a street corner years ago, watching his own mother, frail but fierce, being told to leave a high-end store because of her humble attire, despite her silent dignity. He remembered the cold stares of the rich, the dismissive wave of a hand. His mother, however, had simply straightened her shoulders, a quiet power emanating from her, and walked away with her head held high. He'd learned then the bitter taste of humiliation, but also the profound strength found in quiet resilience. Now, looking at this child's simple plea, his own transformation began. The cold billionaire facade he wore, built brick by careful brick over decades, began to crumble. This wasn't just a drawing. It was a mirror reflecting a part of himself he had deliberately forgotten. A wound he had pretended to heal by covering it with wealth. He excused himself abruptly, leaving Miss Albright bewildered amidst the glittering crowd. He ignored the questioning glances. His focus narrowed to one purpose. He had to find that boy. He drove back, not caring about the traffic or the winding streets. His luxury car now felt like a cage, separating him from the very real world outside. He parked erratically near the spot, his polished boots hitting the dusty sidewalk this time, a stark visual contrast. The boy was gone. A wave of despair, hot and sharp, washed over him. He was too late. He paced, his mind racing, the image of the drawing burning in his mind. He asked a street vendor, then a local shopkeeper, if they'd seen a boy drawing. Most shrugged. Some gave him wary looks. He felt like an outsider, a man in an expensive suit intruding on a world he'd consciously left behind. Then, an old woman, sitting on an overturned crate, her face a roadmap of life's hardships, spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. "Little Leo? He's often at the shelter, down by the old church. His mama. She's been sick." The shelter was a cacophony of quiet desperation, the scent of antiseptic and stale food hanging heavy in the air. Elijah, in his pristine suit, felt like a bizarre alien. He saw children playing with broken toys, adults with lost eyes. He found Leo in a quiet corner, meticulously drawing again, this time on a discarded newspaper. He looked up, his large, dark eyes wary. He was disabled, a leg brace visible beneath his worn jeans, yet his hands moved with an almost ethereal grace. Elijah knelt, ignoring the dust, ignoring the curious stares. He pulled out the crumbled drawing. "Is this yours, son?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Leo nodded, clutching the newspaper closer. "My mama. She says if I draw enough happy things, she'll get better." The simplicity, the innocent belief, ripped through Elijah's carefully constructed defenses. He remembered his own desperate prayers as a child, his fervent belief that if he was good enough, strong enough, his mother wouldn't have to struggle. He learned Leo's mother was in the shelter's infirmary, battling a severe illness. She needed specialized treatment, something far beyond the shelter's capabilities. Elijah felt a familiar surge of the pragmatic businessman, the one who solved problems with money. But this felt different. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a revelation. He spent hours there, not as Elijah Thorne, CEO, but as simply Elijah, a man who understood the crushing weight of a child's hope. He saw the quiet kindness from the workers, their worn uniforms a stark contrast to the luxury speeches he was used to hearing. He saw Leo offering his half-eaten apple to another child, a moment of profound generosity in a world of scarcity. He even saw a waitress from a nearby crowded diner, her apron stained, stop by to dance playfully with Leo, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy that cut through the gloom. The image of his own mother, dancing in their tiny kitchen to a crackling radio, flashed before his eyes. The next day, Elijah Thorne arrived not in his luxury car, but in a modest sedan, driven by his longtime chauffeur, Samuel. He was still in a suit, but it felt less like armor, more like a uniform now. He had arranged for a team of medical specialists to examine Leo's mother, all expenses covered. He had also begun the paperwork to fund a comprehensive program for children at the shelter, providing art supplies, tutoring, and access to better healthcare. The news spread quickly among the shelter residents, a ripple of disbelief turning into a silent, hopeful buzz. Weeks later, a small private ceremony was held at the shelter. Leo's mother, frail but improving, sat in a wheelchair, holding her son's hand. Elijah stood before them, not on a grand stage, but on the worn linoleum floor. He didn't give a grand speech. His voice, usually booming with authority, was quiet, almost hesitant. He spoke of the drawing, of the message on the back, and how it had awakened something vital within him. He admitted his own past, his own struggles, the moments of humiliation he had faced, and how he had built walls around his heart to protect himself. He spoke of Leo's drawing, a simple, powerful act that had broken those walls down. He made a public apology, not for any specific wrong, but for the blindness of his privilege. For the years, he had forgotten the very essence of human connection. The room, filled with the shelter's residents, the dedicated staff, and a few surprised members of the press, was utterly silent. Then, a single person began to clap, a young woman who worked in the shelter kitchen. Her applause spread, slowly at first, then became a wave of warm, heartfelt sound. Leo, from his mother's side, looked up at Elijah, a wide, trusting smile on his face. It was a child's hug that truly melted the old heart. As Leo walked over, his leg brace clunking softly, and wrapped his small arms around Elijah's waist, Elijah Thorne walked away from the shelter that day, not into his luxury car, but alongside Samuel, both walking the few blocks to where Samuel had parked the modest sedan. The city felt different. The skyscrapers still loomed, but they no longer felt imposing. The dusty streets held a new kind of beauty. He still wore his expensive watch, but it felt less like a symbol of wealth and more like a simple timepiece, counting the moments of a life now truly lived. He carried no grand accolades, no new business deals. Instead, he carried a simple, crayon-drawn picture, carefully folded and placed in his inner jacket pocket. The words "for my mama," alive, a constant, gentle reminder. His public transformation was complete, a quiet strength now radiating from him. He had been a rich CEO who had laughed at a homeless kid's drawing. He had then seen what was written on the back and broken down. But in breaking down, he had been rebuilt, not with more wealth or power, but with something far more profound: dignity, strength, and a deep, abiding peace. In the weeks and months that followed, inspired by Elijah's public act, other powerful individuals, once ensconced in their elite worlds, began to look beyond their own polished reflections, initiating their own quiet acts of bravery and kindness, proving that even the coldest hearts could be melted by the simplest of truths.